My lords, we often think of ourselves as the apex predators of this galaxy. Indeed, billions, trillions even, live and die at our whims. However, space contains some incredibly dangerous, terrifying, and extraordinarily large creatures. Today I'm going to discuss 5, rank them in size, ending with the largest and by far the most dangerous. We'll begin with the Tiyanki Matriarch, certainly the largest and most dangerous of the Tiyanki species. Magnificent she is, the wizened old matriarch. Her hide is bleached and hardened by the eons, her tentacles capable of snapping the hulls of battleships like mere oyster shells. Decades ago, we heard rumours that were spread of a captain sworn to hunt the matriarch to the ends of the galaxy. We would later meet that captain, Reth Undul, the pilot of AH-4B, or Ahab. Her incredible size is an anomaly to be sure. We believe that the matriarch is a wanderer from another galaxy in deep space, where a species of Tiyanki far greater in size and strength diverged evolutionary from Tiyanki in our own galaxy. Of course, it is also possible the matriarch is simply suffering from an advanced form of gigantism, although this would fail to explain her extended lifespan. The matriarch is formidable, but she is not indestructible. While her armoured hide protects her from a wide range of projectiles, she carries a remarkable weakness. There is a very large proton torpedo lodged in her back, a wound from a recent battle that has healed poorly. While seemingly defective, our scans of the torpedo do suggest that it could be detonated, if agitated with a specific energy pulse. But of course today we are focusing on her size, not her combat capabilities. Referencing sizes is always a difficult task in our galaxy, as you well know, my lords. So today, for a reference, I took something that we know extremely well indeed. Earth. An approximate diameter of Earth is 12,742 kilometers, or 7,918 miles. Using this as a reference point, we get a battleship that comes out at approximately 8,000 kilometers or 5,000 miles in length, which means the matriarch, which is far larger than a battleship, indeed more than twice the length of a Commonwealth battleship, comes in at a length of approximately 17,475 kilometers, or just under 11,000 miles. A true Leviathan. But she is also the smallest of the monsters that we are discussing today. So let's move on. And interestingly, we managed to find an asteroid-sized piece of fossilized fecal matter, poop, if you will, from roughly 1 billion years old. The specimen has been designated as Coprolite. We know it's not from the matriarch, or indeed any of the creatures on this list today, but it's fitting since it appears to be the largest galactic poop specimen we've ever found. A very impressive specimen indeed. We have ascertained that the creature's diet must have mostly consisted of rare minerals and silicon-based organisms. This object currently holds the galactic record for the largest known single piece of excrement. But moving back to the Leviathans, next up we have an entity that consumes stars, the Stellarite Devourer. The Stellar Devourer is a parasite on the galactic stage. Indeed, not unlike many empires we see make it to the galactic stage. It was born out of fear and nuclear fusion. The Devourer roams the galaxy, submerging itself in stars and feasting on them within. It certainly does not like being disturbed. The creature is larger than your typical moon. Its body radiates heat and the same wavelength of energy that is produced by a system's star. The accounts we have collected are few and sparse. Very few sources have first-hand experience with the entity, but all of our data points to the same fact. It is a terror that brings nothing but ruin. The Stellar Devourer is capable of feeding on fusion itself. Our very educated guess is that its biology is the same result of some of our outer dimensional fusings of dark matter and solar matter. The creature dives into stars, feasting on their innards in order to fuel its own internal fusion reactor. It will bring death to all systems it reaches. Either they will shatter like ice after its banquet, or they will burn from being exposed to a second sun from within the being's belly. It wants to feed, and it will stop at nothing to get its share. The only thing we know for sure is that the collected core is the most important aspect of the Stellar Devourer. The creature desperately needs to keep its own internal furnace burning. lest the cold void of space reach its vital organs. But of course we're here for size, so how does it stack up? We know the Devourer to be approximately the size of a small moon, and this correlates to approximately 21,000 kilometers in length, just under 13,000 miles. I'd also suggest that the Stellar Devourer is a little bit rounder than the Matriarch. It's much denser, which I guess is reasonable considering it eats stars. Nevertheless, it's a shame that we can't accurately determine its volume, but let's move on to the Voidspawn, one of my favourite planet-killing entities. If our suspicions hold true, the Voidspawn is very far away from home. We believe it's the progeny of an extragalactic predator of unthinkable proportions, one that stalks the void of space in search of its prey. Though we've never before encountered a live specimen, we have heard the tales of destruction and chaos that a fully grown adult Voidspawn will leave in their wake. It is said that worlds will fester under their shadow. Nevertheless, from what we can tell, the mother lays its planet-sized egg in the orbit of a star, where they will incubate for thousands of years, sometimes even long enough to develop an atmosphere and organic life around them, as if they were indeed a planet. They feed off living matter, and adult Voidspawn are said to exert a strange influence across all living things. Fortunately, this spawn seems to have been abandoned by its parents. The Voidspawn will project corrosive spittle and spikes that can burn through the thickest of armor plating, but we believe applying a protective acid-proof coating can slow the progress. Defeating the Voidspawn while it's young is clearly very important, as we are aware just how large an adult can become. Indeed, we will discuss the adult Voidspawn later in this report. The young Voidspawn, however, is still incredibly dangerous. It weighs in at approximately 32,765 kilometers, or just over 20,000 miles in length, meaning it's approximately the size of 4 battleships. For further context, remember that when this being hatches from its egg, it cracks the planet from which it emerges, a tremendous display of power and might. However, it is just a baby, and we'll find out more about that later. The next noteworthy specimen to discuss is the Gargantua megalus. After undergoing dramatic and sudden mutation, we found some plants that had increased in size exponentially to envelop the surface of an entire planet. Filling the air with a deadly pollen, the Plantoid species suffocated the planet and rendered the dormant sentient species completely extinct. The roots of these plants were large enough to carve deep fissures through the planet's mantle, siphoning molten rock to the surface in some areas. The Gargantua megalus is by far the largest Plantoid species we've ever discovered. But back to Leviathans, and now we move on to the Sky Dragon. The Sky Dragon, also known as Hrozagar of the Endless Flames, is a dragon from beyond our galaxy. It travelled here as a mere whelp to seek out a nascent civilization to assist in raising its young. Upon finding a pre-FTL species, it guided them, waiting until they eventually reached the point where the dragon deems them worthy for communication and eventually would form an alliance with said planet. After enough time, the dragon even went on to birth children which fly and fight alongside it. The Sky Dragon is extremely large indeed. It measures 37,500 kilometers in length, or approximately 4.6 battleships. An absolute monster of a creature. But now we begin to move on to some of the truly giant Leviathans in our galaxy, and we have the Dimensional Horror. Our instruments monitored the immense energy surge when this entity pierced its way into our realm of existence. The Dimensional Horror is a creature of pure malice, born in a dimension that bears more than a striking resemblance to the realm of Hell, as described by many galactic religions. What we are seeing is but a small part of a greater whole. The creature in its entirety is believed to be of multitudes larger, and it is very fortunate indeed that it was unable to complete its transition into our universe. Had it been successful, the creature would have likely consumed all galactic life by now. The dimensional portal that it spawned from is its greatest weakness. Without it, it cannot exist. We have identified several weak points in the portal's energy matrix that could be exploited by conventional weapons, and as stated, we believe the bulk of the creature to be trapped in whatever nightmarish realm it spawned from. There is certainly a malevolent intelligence here, ancient beyond our concept of time, and clearly utterly alien in its design. We can only guess to its purpose, though we suspect it's nothing good. Of all of the creatures on the list, the horror's size is quite difficult to measure, certainly given that most of it isn't in our dimension. However, regarding the part that can be measured, we estimate to be in the region of 27,000 kilometers in length. However, I would stress, given its general proportions, it's a bit more awkward to accurately measure, and perhaps length is not necessarily the best way to do it. Certainly, it is much squarer, if you like, than some of the other creatures on this list, and remember, if we agree with the assumption that at least half of the creature's body is on the other side of the portal, this puts it in the region of 54,000 kilometers in length, a truly terrifyingly gargantuan creature. Indeed, an artist's impression of the creature may be viewed on screen now, and credit to said artist. But now, my lords, we move on to some of the largest biological creatures, perhaps even the largest sentient entities to have ever appeared in our galaxy. I speak, of course, of your mother. I jest, my lords. I speak, of course, of a fully grown adult Class 4 Behemoth. The Behemoth was spawned into existence by an empire who attempt to transcend regular existence, and for lack of a better term, become gods. This path to become the galaxy's apex predator was forged with the flesh and biomass of hundreds of worlds. It would begin with what was deemed to be the Great Incubation. The Behemoths are birthed, after all. They are created in a lab and grown in orbit of a gas giant. When the egg finally shatters, the creature inside will break free. It will birth a monster that will consume generations. What would follow this birthing was the era of consumption. The fledgling Behemoth, driven by a primal unyielding rage, was directed outwards. It would fall upon the galaxy, attempting to consume it. Over time, this young Behemoth would consume whatever it could. Space fauna, bioships, even planetary inhabitants, they were all fair game. Organic materials to be converted into the raw caloric fuel required for the creature's metamorphosis. At the final stage, you would witness the Great Merging. Realizing that no single mind could pilot a form of such magnitude, the Behemoth's creators would commit the ultimate act of biological surrender. They constructed a neural hub on their capital planet and funneled the collective consciousness of their entire species into the beast's nervous system. Billions or trillions even of souls dissolved into this singular entity, one that had the capability to consume the galaxy. The entity that we now know as the Class 4 Behemoth would be the final evolution of the Behemoth Fury nightmare. It is a creature that has transcended the limitations of biology to become a galactic catastrophe. But the question to be asked and answered is just how large is it? We know that its egg is planet-sized, as is written in the excavation of the Fallen Empire hive mind, at last thought. Of course, planets somewhat differ in size, but it's a start. We also know that the Behemoth can literally consume a planet. Though it does eat it in chunks, its jaw must be large enough to take bites out of said planet. We can see from the images just how much larger the Behemoth is compared to its fellow Leviathans. It's frankly silly to categorise them together. Nevertheless, based on previous predictions, I believe the Class 4 adult Behemoth to be in the region of 170,000 kilometers in length, translating to 105,000 miles. That's 21 battleships or 13 Earths lined up in a row alongside it. It is truly, truly terrifying. Of course, the Behemoth spawning does not go unchallenged. As I mentioned earlier when discussing the Voidspawn, an adult is considerably larger and more powerful. When a Class 4 Behemoth is spawned, an adult Voidspawn will sense it. This can only appear from intergalactic space on the edge of the galaxy, suggesting that adult Voidspawn roam the gaps in between galaxies. Nevertheless, it will hunt the Behemoth, and only one creature can survive. In terms of overall size, the adult Voidspawn is the true winner in our galaxy, coming in at approximately 172,199 kilometers, or 107,000 miles. I can only imagine watching these creatures bigger than Jupiter battle it out in our solar system. It will certainly boggle the mind.